We grow when we give.
We grow when we give.
We grow when we give.
Nosotros crecemos cuando damos.
We grow when we give.
与えるとき、成長する。
We grow when we give.
Welcome to ROG, Return on Generosity. I'm your host, Shannon Cassidy. This podcast celebrates generosity at work, not financial giving valuable time, mutual respect, alternative perspectives, and genuine collaboration. Our special guest today is Chris Stanley, a leader in the executive education space. Chris has more than 20 years experience working with diverse global teams in the development of compelling management content and executive education solutions. Chris has extensive experience curating and hosting large-scale leadership conferences around the world. These conferences include the World Business Forum in New York, Sydney, Milan, Madrid, London, Mexico City, Bogota, and others. Over the years, he has worked with some of the world's brightest minds, including Nobel Prize winners, prime ministers, and presidents, CEOs of global companies, and top-notch business academics, curating content to produce in-person and digital learning programs focused on today's critical business management and leadership topics. Additionally, he has had the privilege to moderate conversations with many high-profile figures from business, politics, and academia. What I appreciate most about you, Chris, is your approachability and your natural curiosity. Welcome to ROG.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for that very kind introduction.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so grateful to be on this side of the conversation with you, the one that you're most comfortable with. So now we get a chance to learn more about you, Chris. So why don't we start with your background?
Okay, yeah, let's do it. And as you say, yes, I'm not used to being on this side of the equation. I'm normally the one putting the questions rather than answering them. So it's going to be a fun 30 minutes or so. So yeah, my background. So I am originally from Manchester, born and raised. I went to university down in Cambridge. I moved to London, worked in London for a while. I then spent some time kind of wondering what I was going to do. I went to South America for a while. I spent some time in the Peruvian rainforest, moved back to London, then went to Madrid. And it was in Madrid where I started working with Wobi, which was, wow, I spent most of my professional career with Wobi. So that was back in 2005 when I started. So what's that, 18 odd years ago. I was in Madrid for about 3 years. I then moved with Wobi to Buenos Aires in Argentina. I was in Buenos Aires for just over a decade. And I've spent the last 6.5 years with Wobi in New York City. So that's, I don't know, there's a lot there, but that gives you a sense of where I've been, my travels around the world.
Yeah, covering the globe.
Yeah.
What's your family structure like? Brothers, sisters?
Yeah.
What is that like?
So I'm the nomad in the family. So everyone else is still in Manchester, pretty much. So I have mum, dad, 3 sisters, nephews, nieces, all back in Manchester.
Wow.
So yeah, that's the family structure. I'm married to Carla, who I met in Argentina, so that's the family there, and so I've got my in-laws down in Argentina as well.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. And I just have to ask, are you a Ted Lasso fan?
I enjoyed the first couple of seasons, and then I felt it was getting a bit much. But yes, I did. I appreciate the first couple of seasons. I'm a Man United fan, which was great for about 20 odd years, if anyone follows football and soccer. But for the last 10 years, it's been not so great, as Manchester City have come on the up, and United have gone in the other direction. So.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, as a native and as a football fan, did it measure up? Because I don't know if maybe more Americans appreciated that that show.
No, absolutely no. It's completely ridiculous, but it is very funny, and I don't know. It's
thoughtful.
It's exactly that's where its real. I think sort of standout quality is it's on the thinking about management, right, and leadership, which you're probably going to get on to talk about. Is actually that's where a lot of people have found their pills of wisdom from TED over the course of the different seasons. So the culture creation and all. So just want to go back to a part of your history that you shared with us about the Peruvian rainforest. What led you there? What did you learn while you were there? You were there for 3 months, I believe, right? Yeah. So again, that was coming out of university and I studied social and political science, and it was something that I loved, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, or particularly where I was going to go when I left university. And I suppose, like I say, I think I've had a little bit of wanderlust and was looking for adventure and wanted to do something that was going to also hopefully make a little bit of a difference. So essentially, it was a volunteer program. It's a volunteer program to spend time doing inventories of animals, birds, plants in the middle of the forest. I mean, literally we were, no running water, long drop toilets, tarantulas in the ceiling where we were, these open huts. We had snakes going down below the where we were sleeping on the sleeping bag. Yeah, it was a pretty authentic experience. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was amazing. But I still look back. I've got friends that I'm still in contact with. It was an utterly intense 10 weeks 3 months in total that we were there. And it was a really intense experience, made some very good friends. And we often look back at it and say, they were good days. Yeah, still some of the best days of my life. Fantastic. With your highlight reel of just like where you lived and some of your adventures, and then with your work at Wobi, you're really a global thinker. You're somebody who has lived in different parts of the world. You are constantly in communication with individuals and leaders from all over the world. This is a big question, Chris, but what are some of the common denominators or threads that you have witnessed with all of these world leaders, these politicians, academics? What are some of the commonalities that you have seen? Commonalities. I don't know if it's possible to say that they all have something in common. I think that's probably not, I don't think you can necessarily compare a Harvard academic legend like Michael Porter with Bill Clinton, with Michael Phelps. They're all in very different sort of very different types of personalities and different backgrounds. I think that one of the things that we look to, sort of the characteristics that we look for when we're looking for content to offer to people at Wobi is excellence. So I think that's we want people that have succeeded at the highest levels and have got stories to tell around that. And then you kind of see certain things that come out through that. You find a lot of these people are extremely disciplined. They, in terms of their behaviors and to be able to get to the levels where they've got to. And they're all very aware that they don't do it alone. I think that it's not a, individual success is it's a team behind it. And, when I speak to people and they reflect on that, that comes through a lot. We typically always get to the team, get to the people aspect of what these people are, these people's stories, etc. So, yeah. Maybe some. Yeah, the team dynamic. Oh, that's really interesting. And you're right. What a range of individuals you've had exposure to and have studied and learned about. And that excellence and that willingness to put yourself out there and really get curious, deeply curious about an issue or an opportunity, right? Looking for a solution. And then I love that whole point about working together, that nobody does this alone. I deeply believe that. So when you think about generosity and generous leadership, what are some of the thoughts that come to mind for you, Chris? So I was thinking about, what is generosity? And, it's about giving. It's about giving without obligation, and it can be time or money or attention or reassurance or love, protection. It's an expression of kindness. And one of the things that, as I was reflecting on, generosity and how it kind of plays into some of the ideas, thought leadership around leadership that I work on is how interwoven it is into some very kind of sort of basic principles around leadership. You think of leadership as the opportunity to have a positive influence on a person or a situation. You can say leadership is a fundamentally generous act. Leadership is about how you make people feel. That is fundamentally generous. You want to make people feel good, be powerful, to feel confident. That's very generous. As a leader, with every interaction you have, there's an opportunity to have a positive impact on other people's lives. And if you look at leadership in that way, then I think that leadership fundamentally is extremely generous. And I was starting to think about it a bit more. I've been starting to revisit, just beginning of the year by chance, I've been rereading or re-engaging, let's put it that way, with the 7 Habits, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, sure.
And as I was just thinking about that, and I was sharing some of the ideas with our team as well, because I was saying, these are really good ideas. All my team should have these up on the wall, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And just some of the fourth habit, think win-win. You know what I mean? Is that's generous. You're not there to I win and you lose. It's so the win-win mentality is a generous mentality. And then the 5th habit of think first to understand and then be understood. So if you think that for me, I just that requires a generosity of spirit to be able to think. And it's not easy, eh? It's not easy. And I'm not coming here saying, I find myself like,
not at all,
trying to make my case or what have you. So I'll be like, but just to be kind of bring some awareness to that. And I think that, so, and again, I mean, I've got a bunch of others as well that I could, that occurred to me, but yeah.
For sure. But those are 2 really good ones. When you think about a win-win, it does require that I have to first understand what winning is to you. What is your objective? What are your goals? What kind of an outcome would be a positive one for you? And then be willing to share with you transparently what that is to me, and then trust that we can co-create something. It's a creative process to negotiate or work through a conflict or even solve a problem collaboratively. So I think that win-win mindset, you're right, it's really generous.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think so. And I mean, it's just, I think this year we've got Amy Edmondson speaking with us at World Business Forum in New York in 2024. So this year in October. And she's extremely, she's known for this concept of psychological safety, which some of your listeners might have heard of as well, and that this concept has become huge in the last few years. And again, I was thinking about, psychological safety, it's about making it your culture a safe place for people to make mistakes, to learn. And that's, you've got to be generous to do that. Do you know what I mean? And I was thinking, you look at it through that kind of lens. Adam Grant's been talking about give and take. One of the best-selling books around leadership for the last 10 years or so. That's all about really in the title, right? About generosity and giving.
The givers, the takers, and the matchers. Yeah. I saw him speak at a WOBE conference years ago. It was brilliant. And you're right. And that was one of the things that fed into my passion for this topic, because I was already acknowledging that as a competency of leaders that I admire the most, but then learning through Adam Grant's work around just the science of it and just how does that impact the workplace and the culture and the psychological safety. I think that's such an important topic. And we had Michael Bush, who's the CEO of Great Place to Work, on ROG. And he talked about how, of all of the surveys that they've done of companies around the world, psychological safety is, he said, the X factor. If you have that, there's predictable other benefits. And if you don't, there's predictable liabilities. So just curious to get your thoughts on psychological safety, maybe in your own work experience and your own team.
Yeah, look, I mean, just to back up what you were saying there, one of the reasons I was really keen to bring Amy into this year's World Business Forum was because I've just seen her work referenced all the time over the last, especially since the pandemic. I think it's become a big thing. And so, so many other thought leaders are referencing her work. I was like, well, no, we've got to bring her in person to speak about it.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that it's not always easy to do, right? Because when you're in a pressured environment, there's the desire to, not the desire, the need, the pressure to succeed, to hit results means that when things go wrong, it's not necessarily natural and immediately to kind of like to give, to react in a way and for people to feel comfortable to make those mistakes. But, I think that, it's something that, I try and do within as a leader within our small team that we have in New York. I think that it's about understanding where people are at and where they are in their professional journeys and knowing where their learning is at, and that it's only through giving people the chance to fail, if you like, that they're going to grow. And so I think that people, and I've also seen it on the other side, that when I feel at my best, when I'm not under the kind of stress that, always thinking about, how's this going to be judged if something doesn't work out? And I think that question about judgment is super important. I've been learning, this is something I've been working on a lot. It's like so many of the sort of the negative things that happen in our lives, whether it's professionally or personally, comes out of judgment. I think people would just be so much more aware about the judgments that they're making, good and bad, because we all do it, and whether it's judgments of people, whether it's judgments of situations, and it's something that I've been personally working on to try and improve my kind of leadership, and I think that it's something that I think that everyone can benefit from.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I completely agree, and I think it echoes the seek first to understand before being understood. Because if I was genuinely trying to understand where you're coming from, and I was curious about, like, let's just say we have a different opinion about something, or you did something that I perceived was unjust, right? What if I approached that with curiosity and tried to understand where you were coming from, what your thought process was, assuming that you weren't trying to, make this outcome that I'm perceiving is so horrible? And if I could avoid that judgment, and then even judging myself, I think that's another part of judgment that's very difficult to overcome, or, I don't know that we can ever eliminate it, but if we could at least mindfully reduce the amount of self-criticism and introduce self-compassion, I think that would be...
Well, you talk about generosity. Generally, we talk about generosity, and generosity to self, I think, is the starting point. If you don't have that generosity to self, and that's everything. That's looking after your physical, your mental well-being. If you can't show up for yourself, how are you going to show up for other people? And that's, if you don't have that basis, you are not going to be effective for other people. And that's absolutely critical.
So true. What are some of the things you do, Chris, for self-care? I mean, I know you've at least have accomplished a major running feat. I don't know. Would you describe yourself as a runner?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm not a professional runner or anything like that, but I took it up. Probably I think I hit my early 30s, and I spent most of my 20s not perhaps caring for my body in the way that I maybe should have done. And I wanted to make a change. And so I got into running. I started doing triathlon, and started sort of looking after myself a bit more. And then I've run a couple of marathons before, and I ran a marathon in where was it? In Barcelona, and qualified for the Boston Marathon. And then ran Boston last year and did a PR again in Boston. So I was super stoked with that.
How was that for you? What was that experience like? It was
amazing. I'd not run a marathon of that size before. For anyone that doesn't know, so Boston's kind of the pinnacle of amateur marathons, right? The difference to any other marathon, you have to qualify for it. So not anyone can just show up and run it. It's not kind of luck. draw, you've got to hit a certain time. And so it's, everyone there is really good. And there's just
and it's literally a holiday.
And Boston has a holiday for it to like when it's run on and stuff. So, I mean, the weather was pretty rubbish.
Patriots Day, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the weather wasn't great, but it didn't make a difference. It was just a wonderful weekend. I ran with always CFO and CEO, both run marathons, and we qualified together, and we all qualified for Boston. Our CEO couldn't make it, unfortunately, but I ran with my colleagues from Woby. So that was amazing. It was a fantastic experience.
Oh my gosh. Were you representing? Did you have Woby?
No, we didn't go with Woby branding. No, we should maybe missed an opportunity there, didn't we? But,
sponsored by us. For those who are not familiar with Woby, because you and I are talking about this, like everyone knows about it, could you give us a little background of what it is and what the intentions of that organizations are?
Yeah, sure. So Woby is all about curating and delivering top-level management and leadership content for typically senior-level executives, mid to senior-level executives. So it's learning and inspiration that we look to offer people through a variety of platforms. Now, we've been talking about the World Business Forum. That's probably the best known of our platforms, large conferences that take place around the world each year. We have a TV channel in Latin America. We have regular digital masterclasses. We have digital subscriptions to our content, and looking to, our mission is all about helping leaders improve how they lead, so that they can in turn improve their organizations. Which we believe that business has a fundamental role to play in improving society and creating a better society. So if you've got better leaders building better organizations, ultimately you get to this kind of, hopefully, a world which is a little bit better. So we hope we've got we're putting our little bit of, whatever grain of sand or what have you, our little bit of effort into sparking change, giving people an idea, something which will give them motivation to go back to their organizations and make positive change.
It really fulfills that mission. And I appreciate how you continually evolve, like you innovate yourselves. You always like bringing Amy on this year. You think about who is resonating with individuals, whose voice do I want to amplify? Even Stephen Ritz. Stephen Ritz was an ROG guest. Fundamentally, he's a science teacher. He's a teacher in the Bronx, right? But he had innovation, and he thought about, how can I use teaching and science to help students, families, communities, the world. So you gave him a platform, and then that has served the people who have learned from him. So it really has this ripple effect. I mean, do you see it that way, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Stephen's a great example. I mean, that's a wonderful win-win. By the way, I think from thinking about that, because Stephen probably isn't an archetypal Woby speaker. I mean, you've said it yourself. We don't have many science teachers from the Bronx on our platforms, but what he's doing is incredible. It's incredible, and he's, like I said, he's not a top executive, not run a multi-billion-dollar company like some of the people we've had on our stage. But what he is doing is truly inspiring, and he's had more standing ovations than I think any other Woby speaker, which says a lot to like the power of inspiration and what that resonates with people. And it's like, oh my God, this guy is changing the world from a school in the Bronx, and I'm leading this big corporate. That makes me feel like I should be doing a bit more. You know what I mean? It kind of, I need to step up here. And it was great for Stephen because it gave him, I know he's told me many times, Woby's been a platform for him to spread these ideas, not just through the US, but around the world. And for us, like I say, he's been a wonderful speaker for us in cities around the world. So, it's been a great collaboration.
Beautiful win-win. Thank you for inviting people like him to your stage, and for just the constant way that you look for how to help people. I really think that your mission about helping leaders improve how they lead, and doing that through thought leadership, inspiration, idea generation, because you just never know where that spark is going to set fire and then it's going to turn into something that changes the world. So you give people opportunities, not just to learn from the speakers, but to learn from each other. You kind of curate a population of people who are interested in that kind of growth and generosity. With one of the reasons why I love it. So when you think about your own career, I'm curious to learn about examples of when you've seen generosity either given to you or opportunities that you've had to pour into others.
God, right. So this is a bunch of, we could go down here. So I know we have limited amounts of time. So I'll give you one kind of, it's just a nice one. It's kind of more of an anecdotal one to kick off, which was from when I was a lot younger. It's probably over 10 years ago. And it was when Manchester United were good at football, were good at soccer. And I was working in Argentina at the time. And as I'm sure you know, Argentina, absolutely football, soccer, mad country. And I was this random English guy that turned up in the office in Buenos Aires, and I was kind of a bit lost and what have you. But the CEO at the time there, Nelson Dubosky, was very, very generous. And, he took me under his wing a little bit. And that year, the Champions League final, which is the final of the European kind of club soccer tournament, was taking place in Wembley in London. It rotates around different cities in Europe. And he said, Chris, if Man United get to the final, I'll send you there. And so I was watching, progressing through the rounds, and they effectively got to the final of the Champions League that year in Wembley. And this is a hot ticket. This is like, Olympic 100-meter finals. It's not easy to get tickets for this event and what have you. And by hook or by crook, he sorted it out and he put me on a plane and he got me to London and got me into the stadium. And then I watched Manchester United get roundly beaten by Barcelona. But it was. I will always remember that. It's something that completely beyond the bounds of day-to-day work. What anyone would expect from, for what I would expect anyway, from a leader, for a boss or what have you. And Nelson has since moved on. He's doing his own thing. But whenever I'm down in Argentina, I meet up with him, and it's a sign of how to create a bond, and I think it's that is still there today.
Like, what did you learn from Nelson in that example, or just in general?
I think it's about thinking about the individual. So he knew, I was British. I was down there on my own in Argentina. I love football. And he kind of came up with something which was unique and personal for me. And just, something which, he knows that just making someone feel
like they matter and they're seen. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to psychological safety. When you were talking about like people, like as a generous leader, you want people to feel that way. What are other examples that come to mind, Chris?
Yeah, just professionally, some of my biggest people that have given me opportunities. So again, back in Argentina, the first time that my boss at the time gave me the opportunity to moderate a session on the main stage of of the World Business Forum, which for me was like, wow, do you know what I mean? I was like, huge butterflies. I was probably awful, but like it was just walking out on that stage, and that set in motion sort of a whole series of events that really led me to some incredible experiences. And so she didn't have to do that. Like I say, I wasn't particularly very good at it when I first started, but I gave me that opportunity. And then Wobi's current CEO, Alberto Sai, gave me the chance. I moved to the US 6.5 years ago in one role, and he gave me the opportunity to run the business here. And he was taking a punt. I recognized that. I hadn't run a business before, and our US operations, it's an important part of our business. And he saw something in me, and he gave me an opportunity. And again, I think both of those are, just giving people opportunities, seeing something, giving them, I think is two examples that I've benefited from a lot.
That's Amazing. And they were giving you those opportunities. And then how did they set you up for success? That original moderator role and now running this business, how have they supported you?
So I think in the first one, it's always just picking you up. You know what I mean? You've got to be confident. And they were just told all the time, you were great. You're good. You're good at this. What do you need? Do you need help? You want to look at, just the generosity of time to, check the questions or, just that reassurance, I think is super. That was super important. And then with regards to the US, it's been much more, I would say, a role of mentoring. It's been, I'm here learning from. I've learned so much over the last 6 years. It's just been, curve like that, kind of fairly exponential, and it's and so it's just that time and generosity of giving. Learning and experience, I think what I've seen from both of those.
That's such great examples. And I just think it's the return on generosity of that they wanted to give you an opportunity, and then you have in turn, I'm sure, looked for other ways to pay it forward and give other people opportunities. And in the role you're in, how can the work I'm doing be of service and help leaders to improve how they lead, right? You have that mission in mind. And so I always think that when we give generously to others, we just never really know what the dividend is going to be, but we know that there is something, and we're not giving so we can get, but the fact is it's so rewarding, right?
I totally get that. I totally agree with that. And I don't know. It's not something I consciously do, right? But I suppose if, I was, well, how am I generous? Do you know what I mean? I was thinking about it before I came on because I thought you might ask. And I was like, it's not something I particularly would maybe sort of define as a characteristic or even, but I feel like, especially, I've been 18 years in this company, and that is something that I'm very conscious of. So whenever new people come in and are starting, I want to check in. I want to give my time. I want to be approachable. I kind of forget, someone just coming in, a 22-year-old person in Spain, and they see this person that's been in the company 18 years in New York, and it's like that I want to just try and be open and give them the time, and it might not be directly related to my particular objectives at any one time, but I think that's that's important. And then again, I suppose it's the. I was thinking about what we do, and I think that what Wobie at its best is generous. It's generous in what we're trying to give to people, and we're trying to help people, and so I see that when we're with clients and with certain situations, and I've learned so much from another speaker last year. We had Will Guidara, who wrote the book on reasonable hospitality. He was the founder of or owner manager of the 11 Madison Park with restaurant in New York, and he wrote this book called On Reasonable Hospitality, which again is I think it just ties into, again, it was another one I thought that's just generosity all over. And I think if you thinking about how you can be unreasonably generous, let's say, I think to other people, whether it's your clients, whether it's your employees, even our speakers, it's you see that come back, and I think that it's one of those things that we saw a lot in the pandemic. On many levels, Wobie shouldn't have survived the pandemic. Our revenues went from whatever they were to zero literally overnight. And they were there for about a good few months. And we kind of reinvented ourselves. We worked very hard to reinvent ourselves, and we got through. But it could very easily have gone the other way. What came in for us were clients who were very generous with us. They said, look, they bought tickets for a conference that you said, no, we'll stay, you don't need our money back. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, when you're back, we'll come. Speakers who we'd signed contracts with or what have you said, geez, Wobie's been here for 30 years. We need Wobie. We want Wobie to be here. Yeah, we'll do whatever you want. They came in, they did webinars for us. They did a bunch of stuff. They helped us through. Wobie staff went above and beyond, to kind of help the company through that period, and so we saw the fruits of all this kind of work that we've been doing, as a culture, as a company for 30 odd years, when we were needing kind of other people to come in, and it was like, well, geez, you guys, we want Wobi to still be here in 12 months' time. And so, we've come out, not just got through the pandemic, we've come out stronger than ever. So, it's fantastic.
What a wonderful story. And to think that you may not have even realized how much you had served society and these people who would want to come in and support you if you never really needed help like you did during the pandemic. So I just think, in hindsight, it wasn't pleasant at the time. No doubt it was probably very scary. But in hindsight, you look back and you think, gosh, this is really a community that we've created. And that's what a community is, right? We all support each other and make it safe, and we want to thrive together. And we think about the win-win, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So at the end of every episode, we try to recap some of the things that we learned so that individuals could apply some of these lessons to their own work and lives. So here's a couple of things I've got, Chris, and then just jump in if there's something else that comes to mind. So one of the things you talked about is about how to be a positive influence and think about how you make people feel. I think that's a really important thing for leaders to think. How do I make people feel? What kind of an environment am I creating? And then with the reflection on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, the two you highlighted was to think win-win, really to think about, what would it look like to have mutual gain here? And then the seek first to understand before being understood. So that curiosity, that I wonder, let me unpack that with you. And then you talked about judgment and how we have to be cautious around not judging others, judging situations, and not judging ourselves, which led us to self-care. How are we being generous to ourselves? Thinking about our own well-being. How do we tick? What are some of the resources that we could utilize to help us to develop in that area? And then, when you're talking about the Wobi mission, helping leaders improve how they lead, that helps us to think about what is our mission in our organization, for me individually, what is my mission? How well am I serving that? And then you talked about giving people opportunities, giving them reassurance, mentoring. And then it's interesting because when you were talking about how you welcome people, I wrote down the word hospitality. So hospitality, how are we being hospitable? How are we even being unreasonably hospitable? I love that. And just helping people through our generosity and our observation of what their needs might be, making ourselves available to them. Is there anything that you would add to that?
That's a pretty good summary. I suppose that something else we didn't talk about, which I thought about as we were talking about judgments and thinking about judgments and be aware of how we judge situations and others and ourselves, is thinking about tying that in with values. So I've seen values for me underpin, again, together with judgments, just so much of our lives, and when we're in conflict and when we're not, and often we find every kind of conflict is basically because someone is clashing with our values. And it's why am I in conflict with this person? And you realize, well, it's because I have this value. And what values have they got in this situation? And if you understand it from that kind of level, it doesn't become personal. It's not about personality. It's something fundamentally about that person. And so, I think that that's just something else that I just wanted to mention because I'm thinking about it a lot at the moment. I bring a lot of awareness to that, to my leadership, to my relationships, personal, professional. And I think that that's something that I hope, maybe listeners want to think about a little bit more. And yeah. Brilliant.
It's so true. Because I think conflict is like, I'm trying to make you value what I value.
Right.
And you're trying to make me value what you value. Instead, that whole seek first to understand, right? What do you value and how is that showing up in this? And then how am I interpreting that? Because sometimes it's my interpretation of something as a conflict to a value that I have instead of it actually being in conflict. So we have to own that part of the storytelling as well.
Absolutely.
So rich. Thank you so much, Chris, for making time and connecting with us, sharing your wisdom with us. Look forward to the next Wobi conference. I'll put all these links in the show notes for our listeners to get on board if you're not already and to enjoy the content that you're creating. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for what you're doing. It's a great project. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the time we've spent together today.
Thanks for listening to ROG, Return on Generosity Podcast. Please help us grow by subscribing and reviewing us on your favorite podcast player. And for more information, visit bridgebetween.com. We grow when we give.
우리는 나누면서 성숙합니다.
We grow when we give.
On rayonne quand on donne.
We grow when we give.